Hello and welcome back to Unmasking Mum, the podcast. I am your host, Ana Bonasera, and we are here to answer your questions that you're Googling, that I have definitely searched in the past when it comes to ADHD and being a mum in particular. But if you're not a mum, welcome anyway. Today, I really want to talk about right to choose the pathway, but comparing my journey and my children's journey. So if you don't know me, I have 5 children, 4 of those who are boys who are all either autistic ADHD, and then I have a 2-year-old girl who I'm pretty sure will follow suit. She is absolutely wild, but that's kind of nothing's going there at the minute with her. So I have twins who were diagnosed when they were 3 years old. Okay, they are now 12. So it was a long time ago, and they were so far behind in their development. They were both nonverbal when they were diagnosed as autistic, and also were diagnosed as a global development delay. So that was a whole other different journey that we've been on. Now, with my eldest, when I started to go to workshops and stuff once the twins had been diagnosed, and I started to learn more about what autism was, because I didn't have a clue beforehand, I didn't know at all. I kept thinking, oh my God, that sounds so much like Nathaniel. And he is only 14 months older than the twins. So they were so close together in age. And obviously he was my first child, so I didn't have much in terms of to relate to compared to the twins who were so severely behind. He was a little bit late in terms of his speech. He was a very, very active child, didn't have much in terms of concentration, but that could just be, a child thing. That I didn't know much about ADHD back then, but even the hyperactive side that I did know about, it didn't really ring a bell for me at that moment in time for him. And as he grew up, he actually became quite an anxious child and quite a worried child, quite an overthinker, and a very serious child as well. Now, I thought that was down to maybe being a young carer and having to grow up quite quickly with the twins around. And anyway, there were lots of different things that were going on. And when we got to just before lockdown, actually, school thought that maybe he was dyslexic because he really was behind with reading and he really struggled with handwriting. English generally didn't like, but maths, he was like that. He was a proper Matilda with maths, but then he couldn't show how he was working it out. He could just do the maths and not actually explain how he got there. So there were some issues with his learning. And then we went into lockdown, and I then saw what I thought was anxiety at the time. I knew he really struggled with English. So what I would do is I would write out what we had discussed that was going to be the answer, and then he could copy my writing into his workbook. And at the time I also had Spencer, so Nathaniel was in year 3 and Spencer was literally 18 months too. And I would take Spencer away. The twins had some days at school, so the days that the twins were at school, because they were vulnerable children, so they did get to go to some days, we would do the work on those 2 days, and I would leave him with this set of work, and then I would go and put the washing on in the kitchen or do something in the kitchen, and then I would come back in with Spencer and he would still be sat there with a blank page. Now, I saw that as anxiety, thinking that he was just sat there worrying about what to do, but now I see it as maybe it is more to do with his neurodivergence. So at that moment I talked to the Senko a little bit, but I didn't go ahead with things for reasons that people in the family didn't believe that they saw it there. And I kind of listened to those outside voices and not my gut instinct, which I really regret. Then we go forward a little bit, and at the end of 2021, he had this huge spell of not being able to fall asleep, which wasn't like him at all. He's never had an early bedtime. He's always kind of stayed up late, but he literally couldn't go to sleep. And he's such a good kid. It wasn't like he was fighting sleep. It was like he was so anxious about not being able to fall asleep that it was making it worse. And he was literally in tears, not being able to fall asleep. And it would be like gone midnight. Then we tried all the things and it was affecting then his work. So that is then when we did a CAMHS referral for the Getting Help pathway. We're in Oxfordshire, so it might be differently named wherever you are, which is basically more for like mental health and anxiety rather than a diagnosis. And once we went through that, we saw a lady initially, and I mean, it was a bit of a wait after that. I can't remember how long it was. And she then did like an initial like questionnaire with them, one on ADHD, one on autism, and one on anxiety. And I didn't see the ADHD in him at all, but autism and anxiety I saw. And she came back and said to me that, yes, he scores highly for autism, for anxiety, but also for ADHD. And I was like, what? I don't see that at all. And then when I started reading the full criteria of what ADHD actually is, the inattentive and hyperactive, the impulsive, and then the both combined together, I was saying light bulbs were going off like it was Las Vegas Strip. Because I was thinking, this sounds just like me, and Nathaniel is so similar to me in so many ways. So I then was like, wow, this is a real wake-up call of what ADHD looks like. And I had kind of started to hear things about ADHD in terms of how it presents in women, but I'd never seen that in Nathaniel because people had been talking about it in women. And I think that's why I really don't like that kind of narrative of the inattentive side is a female version of ADHD, because it can also present in that way in males too. And now I look at him and I do think I see combined within him. And I was diagnosed with combined ADHD. So because he was going through this, and we then were on the CAMHS waiting list we've been on there now. I feel like it's almost 5 years we've been on there. Maybe 4 years where we've been on the waiting list for an autism and ADHD assessment. And I know obviously the waiting lists are really long, and back when we first put his referral in, we were told it would be 3 years. And obviously it's not, which I always feel like is a really bad thing for services to do, is to over promise and under deliver. And they almost need to be like, right, it's going to be a 10-year wait list, but when you get sent at 5 years, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Always aim to under promise and over deliver. That's the right way around, isn't it? Under promise and over deliver. That's what we would prefer. Or just be realistic with us. Do you know what I mean? So I had done all of that paperwork, obviously, and that was all. The ball was rolling with him. Then at similar times as this was going on with Nathaniel and the first initial CAMHS, my then 4th child, Spencer, was having a real mental health crisis. And we had been told by preschool that they saw challenges. They have to be very careful, I think, about how they word things. I wish they'd have just gone to me, we think you need to go to the paediatrician, the health visitor, and just, he needs to get tested. He's just like the others. It's just open me up a family account, please. Just have one person for the whole family would be amazing. Anyway, that's not reality. And once we had heard that from preschool, we did start to see things. But then again, different members of the family related to me and Jordan were not concerned, and they just were like, no, it's just learned behaviour because of the twins. It's like Spencer's fine. If you're just listening, I'm doing quotation marks, because there's nothing wrong with you if you're autistic ADHD. It's just a different type of brain. We know that, but that's how it was coming across. I know they don't mean it in this circumstance. They weren't meaning it in a nasty way, but I wish we hadn't listened, because then we ended up, when Spencer was in year 1 at school, in this mental health crisis. Now, because preschool had mentioned that obviously earlier, when we got to when he was in his first year of primary, which is called foundation in our school, I had flagged at the first parents' evening that preschool had said this. Do you see any signs? And they were like, no, don't see anything. So I was like, okay, cool. Because I knew that that was the January, and I knew that in the June he would be turning 5, and that meant then we would no longer be able to be accepted under the paediatrician, which was still a wait, but not as long as CAMS. And then after, we would have to go onto the CAMS wait list, which obviously I knew from experience with going through Nathaniel, it was very, very tedious and very long. When it was April, I was then by this point 8 months pregnant with Mila, and the teacher said, actually, yeah, I think he's got ADHD. Literally, my gut just dropped. Just the feeling, I could still feel it now, of just like, I don't know how to describe it. It was such a disappointment type of feeling of, why couldn't you have just said this in January? And I know obviously they hadn't seen them for a long time, so it's one of those things. But by that point, I thought, I'm 8 months pregnant. The idea of then going through all the paperwork while pregnant, stressed out. And I was already also doing some parent classes online for Nathaniel during this time too. And obviously dealing with the twins and everything, that the challenges that happens with them. And I just didn't have the fight within me to do it. And Spencer was getting on fine. He was actually doing really well at primary school and enjoying it and going in happy, had a good group of friends and everything, which Nathaniel never had. He's had a few good friends, but it's taken him a long, long time to make these relationships now. But Spencer has always had a really good group of friends. So I just thought he'll be fine. We'll wait till Mila comes, and then in the new school year, or after term or whenever it was, we'll do it. We'll do the referral. Then year 1 comes, and to be fair, in summer holidays, it all started to just build. His emotions started bubbling up, and his self-hate, his low self-esteem. And from about August until December, it just rapidly declined. He was presenting like at school, saying he hates himself. He didn't want to be here anymore. He was going to get a knife and hurt himself. All of these things, hitting himself physically at home, at school, literally during the play or the nativity. That was like my lowest moment. And I was just sat crying while child had told him to stop jumping. He'd finally been happy and felt comfortable, and a child had told him to stop jumping, and then he just literally was smacking himself in the face, scratching his cheeks. And I was sat there just absolutely gutted and bawling, like trying not to bawl my eyes out, and desperately trying to wave to a teacher to get him. Because I could have gone up there, but I just felt, I don't want to make a big scene and make it even worse, because maybe not everyone's noticed, but probably everyone did. Anyway, the TA managed to pull him off, and afterwards I just remember just crying into the TA. I just hugged the TA and just was crying, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make it better. And the doctors had just basically said, we think he's autistic. Like over the phone, sounds like he's autistic. I got a few leaflets and stuff, but no actual help, which is really, really crap when you've got a 5-year-old saying he doesn't want to be here and technically self-harming. That's what they actually label it as, is self-harm. And I didn't really see it as that, because to me, self-harming is like, seems more severe, but it is, isn't it? It is. So yeah, that was a very scary time for us. And we got to the end of that term, and I don't know what happened in the January. Everything started to ease. I honestly don't know why. It baffles me. And I did wonder if it was a transition from foundation to year 1. And then I started to panic about what the transition would be like when he was going year 1 to year 2, especially because Nathaniel was leaving the school. So he wouldn't be there as like a backup if he needed someone. And then he went on to have the best year 2 ever. His confidence was through the roof. And then again from August, it started to decline again going into year 3, and it hasn't reached as bad as it was at all. But yes, it's like treading on eggshells. Anything we do or say could trigger him to have this self-hate, this low self-esteem. And we have had some kind of help with CAMS, but I just don't think it's really weird, because it's supposed to be mental health help, but I feel like it's mental health help that doesn't help children who are neurodivergent. And I feel like the majority of children who have mental health issues are neurodivergent. So yes, I took some things. We still use some of the practices we learned. We've adapted some, but some just don't work. Reward charts, left for another session. Anyway, this is getting to be very detailed, excuse me. So I went through all of that. We went through all of that with Spencer, and I once we got to the end of our sessions with CAMS, they were basically like, we can put you on the waiting list for the neurodevelopment pathway. What's it called? NDC, development conditions pathway, but it's very long and you might as well go to right to choose. So I was like, right, well, if we're going to do Spencer, then let's do Nathaniel as well. So I need to backtrack a bit because I'm supposed to talk about me as well. So I'm just going to go backwards a little bit. Apologies. So once I had done all the paperwork for Spencer, I knew then both of the Nathaniel and Spencer's journeys were on the way. It might take a long time, but they were on the way. And then at that point, only at that point, did I feel like I could put myself forward for an assessment. Now, previously, I had wanted to go for an assessment, but I had thought it would be selfish if I was to do it before them. So I made sure everything was underway before I then took it upon myself to put myself forward for an autism and ADHD assessment. So I then got so even though I had done their paperwork first, obviously because I went to the right to choose pathway, I got seen quicker. Now, I at first felt a bit guilty again because I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to get an answer before them. That's really bad. But I actually think it was so much better for me to be able to go through that process and understand. And also I don't then know what the processes are. Like if I'd watched them do their assessments, I would then like have a first-hand knowledge of what was going to happen in my assessment because they are very, very similar. Even though we're adults and children, they do very, very similar things, if not exactly the same. So I got an email from my right to choose provider, which was Psychiatry UK. They had quite a long wait list at the time. There are others that have less time, but it took just over 13 months for me, from me applying to me getting my ADHD assessment. It was a really smooth process using Psychiatry UK. They had lots of reminders and they had a really great online portal. You actually could choose what psychiatrist you wanted from a list of appointments that were available when it was your turn. And yeah, it was a really smooth process. I had a really lovely psychiatrist who made me feel at ease. I had gone into it writing down things that I had challenges with, but I didn't actually need it in the end because she how she was, she did actually get it out of me. But I still think it's really good to write that list because it reminded me what I should have been talking about, because my memory is so rubbish. If I don't actually think about what challenges and struggles I have, I probably wouldn't have remembered them on the day. So I really recommend you do that before you or your child have your assessment, is you write it down. Because even if you don't use those notes, writing those notes will have helped you to remember them when you're in the assessment. And if you forget stuff, email afterwards, because I forgot stuff on my autism assessment and I did not email afterwards, and I definitely think I should have. So yeah, that was an amazing process through the right to choose. I had mentioned about my dad dying quite young, and they then put me for a referral for an ECG, is it? I don't know. So I had to go to like a little private clinic in like a town near us. And they just literally hooked me up to a monitor and tested me. It literally took about 5 seconds. It was really, really quick. I was a bit nervous, but it was actually really quick. And then the results came through a couple of weeks later and it was all fine. But she just said, just in case, like, something's amiss. So I thought that was really nice, very thorough. Lovely. And I am on the waiting list for medication. So the medication waiting list is 18 months. So I am almost at a year now. I'm not sure if I want medication for myself. I have a fear of swallowing tablets. So I did say that, and she said there is one type of medication that could come in liquid form. I'm still unsure. I don't know. So that is something we will discuss another day. Now, once I had done that, and then we had finished with the CAMS that was in the February, and then we finished with CAMS for Spencer and the extra help in the April, and she'd said you can either stay on the CAMS waiting list or you can go right to choose. I then decided I was going to do right to choose for Nathaniel and for Spencer. So I did the initial forms, which I printed off of ADHD UK website. I don't know if I can find them anymore, so I'm going to have a look, see if I can find that direct link for you guys. There were forms on there that I could print off for both ADHD and autism, like a checklist, like a check off type of thing. So it was like, does your child do this a lot? Sometimes not a lot, something similar to that. So, and then I scanned them and sent them off to the GP with asking if we could do a referral for the right to choose pathway for an autism ADHD assessment. We're lucky because we can do it online. I bloody hate making phone calls, but if not, you might have to make a phone call and do it, or walk in the surgery, whatever is easiest for you. And I did the same thing for me as well, by the way, but I didn't print off the forms, and they read the questions out over the phone. And every time she had read the questions, I couldn't remember what I was supposed to reply. So by the time I then asked her, I feel like this was like an ADHD test just to begin with. What was I supposed to say? Like the different options I could answer. I'd actually forgotten the question. So it was really complicated for my little brain. So that's why I decided to print off the forms for Nathaniel and Spencer so that I didn't have to remember that. And it made it a little bit easier. Now, one thing that I didn't do, which I wish I had done for them, is you can choose which provider you would like them to put you forward. So again, on the ADHD UK website, you can go there and you can look and see what providers there are. It's a bit like, not like a spreadsheet, but like in boxes. So it's got like all the different providers, and then it's got different box on the top to what it ticks. So whether it's in person, whether it's online or both, where it is in the UK, because some of them are quite far away. There's a lot in Devon, there's a lot up north, there's not much around where we are. So I didn't choose right away. They gave me clinical partners for Nathaniel, and for Spencer, they asked me to choose. So because I then was like, I didn't get round to it very quickly because it's one of those admin things that I was like, I kept going to look, kept looking, thinking, what could I do? Then getting distracted and then not picking one. I even actually picked one once and then forgot which one I had picked. So then I had to go back and look and pick it. So write it down. If you pick one, write it down. So with Nathaniel, we were given clinical partners, and I then was like, okay, what's going on? Hadn't heard for months. So I thought I would just email into the surgery, or like the little online form thing. And they said it had gone off and you just could contact them. So I contacted clinical partners, and they were like, yeah, you won't hear from us until it's time for your assessment. Like book your assessment in, basically. I was like, cool, okay, as long as I know you've got it. I think they were working on February, and Nathaniel's had gone in the March. So that was actually before then, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So it was before we finished with Cam's that I did his. I feel like it wasn't. But anyway, we weren't going to argue. It was going in. So then in December, I got the phone call from them. It was literally like, I think it was like the 23rd of December or something, a hectic time when we just got over a sickness bug. But they were like, do you have 20 minutes to book all these callers? And I was like, yeah, I've got all these callers around me, but okay, sure, why not? And they then and there booked in all of the appointments. So we had one appointment, which would be Nathaniel talking online for the ADOS. This is basically a series, some questions, but also some little activities. They're supposed to send you a list of things to collect, like little items for him to like basically do these little activities to demonstrate stuff, and they didn't. So if you want the list, let me know and I will send it to you, because I did write it down and put it in my notes for next time. So yes, so the first one was ADOS. That last week for us, Nathaniel was really nervous and he said he would have preferred for it to be in person, so I feel bad on that sense, but he did really well. I do feel like there were lots of things he missed and I wasn't allowed to say anything. I had to be quiet. But then this week we had our second part, which was the different psychologist, and I could then talk about the issues and challenges he's had, that I have seen, and the stuff that he had missed. So again, writing that list of challenges is really, really important to go through. We did actually talk to Nathaniel about like what he struggled with in his life, but he obviously just forgot it, bless him. And there was one point where he was talking about friends, and he'd known this one friend since year one, and then the lady started talking at him. So then he didn't finish the fact that he's known him since year one, but he's not actually been friends with him until year 5. And he really struggled with friendship. So that was something that he struggled with. He couldn't get his words out, bless him, like interrupt. He didn't want to interrupt. So I managed to say that on the second one. And then the third appointment is basically the answer. that if he is or if he isn't. And that's just a phone call, I think. And that is for 2 weeks after. So we have ours next week. So it will just be almost two weeks. And they basically come together, discuss, write a report, and then you get a report, which I've heard from someone else who's done clinical plans, which was a really good, a really thorough report. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And then they'll give you the answer and talk you through it and stuff. So we haven't had that part yet. But it has been a really smooth process with them. They have been, both of the psychiatrists were brilliant. And they are very ADHD friendly because they send you email reminders, they send you text reminders, they've got a clear online portal, really easy to use, really ADHD friendly. So if you're looking for someone to go with online, I don't know what the wait list is like this time now even. So obviously we waited, what's that, 8 months, 9 months? Don't ask me to do maths. From March to January, something like that. Sounds similar, sounds familiar. And yes, so I would really recommend. We've had a really positive experience with them. Then with Spencer, I have chosen and I have started the forms, not finished them yet. And we are going with, I think it's pronounced Seacon, but it's Pscion. But apparently it's pronounced Seacon. But there's a P there. And they are based in Basingstoke, which isn't too far from Oxford. So I thought that was better because it is in person. And I think with Spencer being 7, I think it needs to be in person for him. Again, don't know off the top of my head what the waiting times are. But yes, this has been a really great process for Nathaniel. And I'm hoping Seacon will be similar. But I don't know. I'll keep you updated on that. Psychiatry UK as well with me was brilliant. And yeah, they were both really great companies. I think whoever you go with, it's probably going to be a better experience. And it's funny, I was actually talking to a psychiatrist about this, and she was saying that she had worked within CAMS before and now gone over to do this. And she said that with the NHS and CAMS, you have a lot of red tape that the third party companies don't have to do. So what Right to Choose basically is basically it's like a CAMS, but in a private group, basically. But obviously, but the NHS pay them. It's your choice to choose whether you want to go through the NHS or whether you want to go through this third party. And they all have to be within the NICE guidelines. They're all companies that the NHS has said, yes, we can do that. And they don't have to go through the red tape that they do. But she also was saying how streamlined it is. And I would definitely say that it is streamlined. Obviously, we never got to the point where CAMS did an actual assessment for the boys, but it was so smooth and they really have got their strategies and systems in place, and it just worked. It's worked really well. So yes, I'd applaud them. And if you're thinking about going through the Right to Choose for you or yourself, I definitely would recommend. And, learning from my mistake of feeling like I have to wait till the boys have theirs before I have mine, I think that's such a wrong attitude to have it, because the more I have learned and understood about my own brain and how it works as a neurodivergent person, the much more I've been able to help my children. And also, I'm leading the way. I'm just showing them it's okay. It's just a normal part of what our family is going through. And it's nothing to be worried about. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just that we have different types of brain and now we're learning about it, and it's going to benefit us more in life. Everything I have learned about ADHD and helping myself, I have been able to use within my children 100%. So it just shows that the work that putting yourself first and putting that work in with you is so beneficial all around, not just for yourself, but for your children too. Even so that I haven't had the chance to have a chat with Spencer yet about autism ADHD. He's obviously had a chat with CAMS, the mental health team, but I've never kind of broached the subject with him. And it's not because I don't want to, it's because I just didn't know how to phrase things. So I was kind of just leaving it open. The fact that Nathaniel was having an autism and ADHD assessment, the fact that I did, and the fact that Jude and Luca have, and then talking about the different people, the differences are very, yes, they're very different. Jude and Luca have a learning disability as well. That makes a massive difference. And Nathaniel had his assessment the other day. I picked Spencer up from school and he was asking, how did it go? And I said, yeah, it went really well. And then he was like, when's mine? When am I having my assessment? And I was like, I was shook. I was like, wow. I was like, do you think you're autistic? And he was like, yeah, just kind of like shrugged. And I was like, well, yeah, I think so too. We're getting shorter necks basically. And I just felt like so proud that he just felt like it was such a normal thing that he was just so open about it. And I just wish more people were like that, because I think it's just really sad that when people feel like they can't talk about it or they worry about it. And I do understand why 100%, but I just wish that people didn't have to feel that way. So that made me feel really good that he just felt so blasé about it. And yeah, I'll let you know how it goes with that and with the outcome. If you have any questions about right to choose pathway, it is shut in some areas at the minute, which is really crap. And you can check this on the ADHD UK website. It is very easy to navigate, and it will kind of like signpost you to the right part, depending on what it is you want to look for. So that would be my first point of call. But if you do have questions, I'm more than happy to ask. Nope, I'm more than happy to answer. So yeah, get in touch via Instagram, Facebook, email me if you really want to, but probably DMs are much more likely to get responded to, I'm not going to lie, because emails, they tend to slip under the radar, let's say. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. I hope this was useful, and I'd love to hear your experience, especially if you went with Psychon or whatever it's called, PSCION. I'd love to hear how you got on with it and whether it was a positive experience. I'm hoping it will be. And good luck. Good luck. And don't let anyone also hold you back. Like if you hear someone saying, everyone's got ADHD and autism these days, we're all a bit autistic, why are so many people getting diagnosed? It's not going to be of any use. Don't listen to them. It will make a big difference. But there's also so much we could do without a diagnosis anyway. Maybe that should be the next episode, is while we're waiting for a diagnosis or even post-diagnosis, because there is no support, unfortunately. There's nothing. You get diagnosed and then you kind of get waved off. But there is lots of things that we could do as families, as parents, as individuals, to really help ourselves understand and make life a bit bloody easier. Because I feel like for me, my ADHD makes my life harder. And there's a lot of different reasonable adjustments I put in place to make it easier. And there's lots of reasonable adjustments that school can put in place without a diagnosis too. So yeah, that should be my next episode. I'm going to write myself a reminder because otherwise I'll forget. We're going to be talking about reasonable adjustments at school and at home for the kids and for mum too, or dad even, maybe even grandparents. Who knows? Thanks so much for listening. Do share, do comment, do let me know if there's some topics you want to hear about. I really appreciate you being here. And if you can follow and maybe tag a friend who might want to hear this, it'd be brilliant to have them join us on this journey. See you soon. Bye.